right, good. We're live. Welcome to Success for Life podcast. This is Coach Schuman here. I'm on with Will Moore, and we are talking today about taking control of your life from an entrepreneur's perspective, applying that to your life. Will successfully built and sold a company that does a lot of food delivery for over $300 million back in 2019, and now is taking that success to help you. Welcome, Will.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you on here. And tell everybody a little bit more, and I went to kind of a brief background here. Tell everybody a little bit about your background and where you come from and, how you got to this point.
So I was born in California. We moved to Hawaii. My parents were hippies. They both came from very structured backgrounds. My grandfather of my mom was actually general in World War II, and they had been stationed in Hawaii at one point. And so when my parents decided to kind of flee off and be hippies and have kids, they're like, well, my mom's like, Hawaii is pretty cool. I lived there when I was younger. So lived there, but we were definitely outsiders. We didn't have hardly any money. I mean, Hawaii, people think of Hawaii. There is a bad part of Hawaii, just like any area where you can live in. There's cockroaches all around you. And so we were actually the only white kids in our school. It was a lot of locals, the Howleys. They called us Howleys, the white kids. So had a bit of a tough go of it. But, the early years were good. Then at age 7, I moved over. My parents got divorced and we needed help. So we moved over to Bethesda, Maryland, where my grandparents were living, my mom's parents. And so for financial and help and whatnot. And I was just a total outsider because, I was already coming from Hawaii and I had this long hair and I was a hippie and I spoke Pidgin, which is like the local Hawaiian dialect. And they just thought I was a complete freak and weirdo. My name was Rocky at the time, which I was so ashamed of back then. But now I'm like, I may go back to Rocky. It's a pretty awesome name. And so I just had a tough time adjusting. Flash forward, I didn't ever really fit in and I just never got my rhythm and felt very insecure always. And I was the outsider. Flash forward to college, I was essentially suicidal and was like, my brain's broken. I was your typical victim. Like, life sucks. My brain's broken. There's nothing I can do about it. And I serendipitously got introduced to this book by one of my professors that I just devoured, changed my perspective on things, realized, okay, there's a different way to see the world. There's these universal principles that I've been completely ignoring. I'm going to take these and I'm going to reinvent myself and I'm going to figure out what it means to be happy. So I just became like this insatiable self-help beast, reading book after book and using myself as my own human science experiment, testing what worked, what didn't, taking notes. So flash forward 25 years later, I just never stopped doing that. And fortunately, it paid off. The law of compounding kicked in and I was able to kind of become better each step of the way in these main areas of my life, which took me a while to figure out. I call it the 5 cores now, which is your mindset, your career and your finances, your relationships, your physical health, and your emotional health and giving back. And I realized that's what life really is about. And so now that I sold my business, and did well on the financial side, quote unquote success, I can use that to sort of help reduce the friction to get in the door with people and be like, oh, that guy's successful. But it's like, yeah, that's one part of it. One core is your career and your finances, but there's these other areas that people tend to ignore. So I want to help people become an entrepreneur of the most important business they're ever going to run, which is their entire life.
That makes a ton of sense. Now, I find something really interesting. So I've interviewed over, I don't know what we've done now, 100 and something episodes. And I have interviewed quite a few people that are entrepreneurs that came from parents that were either hippies or from that style of growing up, which I found very interesting. It would have never, if I hadn't keep hearing it over and over again, I wouldn't be bringing it up, but it wouldn't be as interesting, but it's been an interesting theme, that something I would have never thought. And,
right.
But before we go into anything, do you have any thoughts of why that might be? Because I've heard it quite a few times.
I do. I haven't really thought much about it until you just said it. And then as you said it, I'm like, that kind of makes sense. I feel like, the hippie, the kind of the sort of one thing that my parents gave me tons of was go for it. Like, if you like this and this makes you happy, like, go for it. There was never you need to be a doctor, you need to be a lawyer, this is the path you should go. So, that kind of free-minded, like, human spirit, like, what makes you happy, follow that path type thing. So from the hippie perspective, I think that helps. And then just from like the low income and like the tough times part of it, I think anybody that starts out that way has that extra motivation to want to, excuse me, want to get to a point. Thank you. Want to get to a point in their life where they don't ever have to worry about money again. And like I said, that was an obsession. That became a big part of as I was growing. Luckily, I was growing my other areas as well, my physical health, my relationships. I wasn't just focusing on the money. But once I got the money, I realized what I already knew in the back of my mind, which was that, yes, this is great. It feels good. I don't have to worry about, where my next meal is coming from ever again. At the same time, this isn't happiness alone. I still need to continue to grow and balance these other main areas of my life. And if I'm just chasing, because what happens, I think a lot of people is they get to the point where it's like, okay, if I could only have this, or, the if onlys, if I could only have the right amount of enough followers, enough likes on my page, $1 million, the right girlfriend, better looking, then I'll be happy. And that's not how it works. It's you got to continually have goals and be growing. And when you hit your goal, it's going to feel good. But just like when we sold our company 2 weeks later, it was like, all right, now what? Right? It wasn't, okay, now I can go sit on a beach and drink a pina colada and never have to worry about happiness again because I've done it. And unfortunately, our society's set up that way to where that's like really the main thing people focus on, and fame and success and money. And they think that if they just have enough of that, it'll solve all their problems. But I mean, you look at people like Justin Bieber. I just read an article on him the other day. He had to actually have his bodyguards go in and check his pulse each night when he went to sleep, so he didn't overdose on drugs. I mean, there's a million of those stories, and you're like, what? Like you're the most famous. You're 21 and you've got all this. But if you don't have your head screwed on right, and you don't have a growth owner mindset, I call it, versus this fixed victim, and that you're going to continually be growing and that you're going to balance your life and keep heading in the right direction, you're screwed.
Yeah. The now what goes to purpose, right? So when we put a tangible goal to things, and if we reach that goal, then you get this now what thing going on. And in some cases it's money, but whatever kind of achievement. And if you don't have a plan for the now what too, people don't think about that, then you get yourself in, oh, well, what's my purpose? And, Bieber's a great example, right? He probably wanted to be a singer and a star, accomplished that, and all the money he could ever want. And then it's taking him a long time to figure out what this now what is for him. What now what I did this at an age that no one ever achieves it in, and they don't realize that they didn't even address themselves personally, right? They chase something, they address the person. So I know this goes obviously to what you're doing now, but talk a little bit more about that if you can, expand on how that mindset is important in understanding those type of things, and I'll let you run with it from there.
Yeah. So, your mindset is the first of the 5 cores. To me, it's the most important, because without your mindset going for you, you're screwed. And it ties into what you're just saying. Like, if you don't understand that, like, life is a journey, and that you were born with certain strengths, you were born with certain quote unquote weaknesses. And the reason I put quotes in that is because it's like, you have things you're good at, you have things you're not so good at. It doesn't make you bad. And I don't like the word weaknesses even, but it's like, don't focus on the things you're not as awesome at. Focus on the things you are good at, and use that to help propel your momentum, and figure out what you're super passionate about, that you love, that fills your soul. And you go, yes, this is what I want to wake up every day and go, even when you're having tough days, it helps you to get through those tough times. And, a growth owner, like I said, that's the key to the mindset that you want to develop. When you're a growth owner, you give fear the finger. Obstacles are temporary roadblocks. You fail forward and you say, okay, that sucked, but what did I learn from it? And you get up quicker than somebody that's a fixed victim that dwells in it and says, oh God, poor me. If only I could have this had happened, or why did this happen to me? Oh, it's always me, right? And you just wallow in it and you dwell, and you're not taking action to then propel your life moving forward. You get caught in it. And I call it getting stuck in your failure loop. Versus your growth owner, you're in the success loop where it's like, okay, you take action, you have a little bit of success. That little bit of success improves your confidence, your perception, your attitude, the way you see the world. That then gives you more energy to want to take more action, and then so on and so forth. And that just keeps propelling itself. Versus the fixed victim, you don't take any action, or you fail, and then you dwell in it, and then that makes you want to take less action, and your mindset decreases and you feel sorry for yourself and life sucks and blah, blah, blah. And then you don't want to take any more action, and then you're going in the wrong way. So to me, that's kind of the key, is that having that mindset. And, it doesn't happen overnight. And anybody tells you they can sell you the elixir of life for $9.99, run the other way. It takes time. It takes practice. Like I said, I was suicidal in college, and it took me many years, to kind of get to the point where I'm like I literally now, if you talk to me, I would not trade my brain for the world. I would not, if you gave me $1 billion and said, can we switch your brain with like somebody else's? No way. But back then I would have given anything to switch who I was. I hated my brain. I'm like, why me? Why is my brain broken? Why do I have these types of thoughts? Right. But in becoming a growth owner, kind of slowly but surely over the years, I was able to develop this attitude of, I love me. I've got everything within me to kick ass, take names, and it's only a matter of time before I do. Let's go, baby. That's where you want to get.
I think a lot of people get stuck in the roadblocks that get put in their way, right? The obstacles after they've had some success. So I think that's an interesting thing, and maybe you could touch a little bit on that. So obviously you've had some wild success, but you have success, then maybe you fail a little bit. What happens to people, in my opinion, is a lot of times they think that success is like this. It's like it's an ongoing, continuous rise, and they don't realize that it's a lot of this, right? And it's an important thing that I think people have to understand, that these obstacles, no matter how good you are at what you do, or no matter what level of expertise, and in my business, I'm in the sports business, and I see competitors coming all the time. People always ask me, why don't you get worried about, I say, well, anybody can be the new guy in the block, and there's flash there, and there's excitement about that, and that's short term. But what's going to happen the first time they don't have the profit they expected, or they lose money, or someone steals from them, or someone doesn't want their product anymore for whatever reason? How are they in it for the long haul? So how do you help people overcome these kind of obstacles to stay in that continuous growth process that you're talking about?
So one thing that I think is different between me and a lot of these, self-proclaimed experts out there. Look, I don't even say I'm an expert. I'm just a guy who has developed his own system over the years, and I want to share that system. And now I've honed it to where I feel like anybody can pretty much use it. But if you don't have an accountability system, like you're just saying, how do you make sure you maintain that? It's so easy, especially in this day and age where life is coming at you a million miles a minute in all these different streaming devices and iPhones and tablets and computers and advertiser things we're seeing, news learning what they think we want and pushing it on us. And, if you don't have a good accountability system and a good set of okay, this is who I am, this is where I want to be. These are I call them failure habits versus success habits. And to me, that's kind of the key here, is eliminating your failure habits in each of these 5 core areas and replacing them with success habits, and making sure that you take those actions enough time until they become automatic. Because habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting us, right? They're going to do their thing over time. And it's a lot easier to develop those low hanging fruit failure habits that are like, okay, well, I'll just scroll here for a minute. And then all of a sudden it's like 2 hours later. Right. And then all of a sudden you're doing it 4 hours a day. And then it's every single day. And, all of a sudden it's like, you didn't even realize it happened, but it's happening, and it's building negative momentum, and it's making you less happy and more depressed. And that's why teen suicide is at an all-time high. Versus, a big part of my system is becoming aware of these things, writing them down. Like, okay, these are the things that I do every day. Okay. And then I actually have this exercise. It's called Back to the Future, because I'm an 80s kid. And it used to be called the funeral exercise, but that was too depressing. So it's called Back to the Future. And you go to the end of your life, right? You flash forward and you go, okay, what do I want said at my funeral? Like, straight up, what do I want said about me in my mindset, in my career, in my finances, in my relationships, in my physical health, in my emotional health, and giving back? Like, did the world go, thank God he's gone, because he sucked every last little bit of energy, and he lied, and he cheated, and he stole, and he didn't have good relationships. The only person at his funeral is his mother because of that. Like, he was in great physical, he was, like one of the people from Wall-E, where he never worked out. So there's all these things, and you go, okay, well, what do I want to be? What do I want? Where do I want to end up? And now you flash back to present time, and you go, okay, am I on track to do that? Like, are the habits that I currently have in each of these areas putting me on track to be able to get to that final destination that I want? And if the answer is no, if it's clear, it just makes it helps clarify all the bullshit and all that gray matter, like I was just talking about, that's in between, like what to focus on. And there's this post, and this guy said this, and should I read this book? Just, that's how you figure out what's important to you and what you want. And then it also helps shine a spotlight on your life and say, what's going on currently? Like, are you doing good things or bad things here? And then you develop this accountability system. And the system that I use started with the Ben Franklin way of, it was literally back when I was a teen, I would put the days of the week at the top, and I would put the habits I'm trying to change down the side, and I would print one each day. And I would put a little check mark next to, did I do this? Did I not? It's now developed years later in stages to where I have this app that I'm coming out with in a couple months, and I'm super excited about it. And it's going to gamify the process. I'm a huge fan of gamification in terms of making it fun to use, to want to level up, like getting those dopamine hits, getting you addicted to leveling up, not just on screen, but in real life. Whereas most of these companies, right, they're getting us addicted, but it's not really helping us. Like Facebook, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders, not to our happiness. So if they monetize your happiness, and as a user, I don't know if you saw the Social Dilemma documentary.
Yeah, I did.
It was a good one. That whole thing kind of, not for your benefit, right? Whereas with me, it's like, well, let's use the same science and technology, but to the benefit. So my app, you're a rocket ship, you start on the ground on Earth. You can't get off until you build enough momentum to be able to stop some of these failure habits and start replacing them with success habits in each of your 5 core areas. You're going to different planets, different galaxies. You're fighting asteroid fields along the way, and having alien encounters on different planets that you land on, and they're giving you advice, and you're having little side quests. And so the whole thing is, I'm using all this same stuff, but hopefully, in a way, and, proof will be in the pudding when the app actually comes out. But the idea is people are going to want to keep checking in every day, holding themselves accountable, and making sure that they're doing the right habits.
That makes a ton of sense. Tell me about the 5 core areas that you have within these principles that you've developed, and if you can expand on them as well, that'd be great.
So first, we kind of talked about the mindset. That's the first one. That's right. Obviously, your perception, your attitude, your just overall like confidence. How do you see the world? Is the glass half empty, half full? Growth owner versus fixed victim? Giving fear the finger or letting it freeze you dead in your tracks, type of thing. Next one is your career and your finance, which is not just all about making as much money as possible. It's about career-wise, making sure that you understand what it is, like I was saying earlier, those strengths and those passions. If you can put those together and say, okay, this is, I don't like the word purpose, but this is kind of where, and again, that Back to the Future exercise will help. Like, okay, this is where I want to end up. All right, so what type of business am I going to be an entrepreneur? Am I going to work for somebody else? Whatever it is, obviously I lean towards the entrepreneur way of doing things because that's how I went. And I like being in control of your own destiny. And then you set goals and you just keep working towards them every day. And I have a system too to help people with goals. Goals, don't get me started on the educational system. It's a broken system. We don't learn about goals. We don't learn about emotional health. We don't learn about the law of compounding, how to make our money work for us. In the public school system, to me, it's an absolute travesty. It's part of something that I'm trying to help correct. So then your relationships, making sure that you're, forming these strong, deep, fulfilled relationships as well as allies to help you along the way. And you find out the more you're helping other people, the more that you're going to want to help them. And you're just, killing it in each of these areas, whether it's your significant other, your friends and your family, or acquaintances and colleagues. Then the fourth one is your physical health, which is fairly obvious. You're eating, you're sleeping, you're working out. Are you basically your body and your mind are super connected. So if you're not taking care of that, you're screwed. And then the last is your emotional health and your giving back. And it's, are you constantly stressed? Are you dwelling all the time? Or do you see the big picture and you're proactively incorporating your passions and into your life? Like, do you love playing golf? Do you love spending time with friends? But then you find like, oh wait, it's been 6 months or a year since I've played golf. I'm really creative and I love to draw, but I haven't done any of that stuff in so long because life gets in the way. It's like proactively making sure that you're eliminating and minimizing stress, dwelling, that type of stuff, anxiety, and you're focusing on the things that truly fill your human spirit and your soul. And then the giving back side is fairly obvious. It's, what is the legacy you're leaving? Is the world going to be better or worse for having you in it at the end of the day? And to me, that's super important. As you start to you build your mindset and these other cores, the giving back side comes. It's hard for people when they have a shitty life or when they feel sorry for themselves or they're a fixed victim to be like, okay, I'm going to go give back. I get that because I was there. So I'm not suggesting that you start with that. Start building these other cores up and you'll start to realize, and it's like magic, the more you actually then figure out how to help the world become better, not worse for having you in it, and you start helping others, they want to help you back tenfold. It's a pretty cool, magical experience.
That's really interesting. So, you're covering most of the basic things that people want to get to in life.
All of them.
Yes. And what when people falter in one area or another, how do you address that with them?
So that goes back to the accountability and the habits in each. So you have your failure habits in each of these cores and you have your success habits in each of these cores that you'd want to replace them with. And so it's about figuring out what are the failure ones I have, what's the negative momentum I'm building in each of these, and how do I replace them with their alternative success habits that are going to make me, get to where I want to be, hit my goals, make sure that I call it firing on all cylinders when you're rocking and rolling with all 5 of them.
Right. So it becomes so this is basically a system that they can keep going back and checking themselves essentially. So if they start to falter in one area, they have a way to be accountable towards it and figure out what those areas are. What are some of the things you do to guide them through that process? Tools and such like that?
Well, so, right now I have a system that I'm helping them with that doesn't involve the app, but that's why I'm super excited for the app to come out because the app is pretty it pretty much handles it all. Again, it's using that science and technology for good versus evil. Part of my pledge as my company is to always put the user's happiness and wellness above profit. And so they'll actually, by using it, it kind of guides them step by step, and it starts slowly. And it's not going to happen overnight, but you start to slowly improve in each of these little areas and you start to build momentum. And then the idea is eventually you're firing on all cylinders. Your rocket ship is flying into other galaxies and you're, blasting through asteroid fields and you're leveling up your ship with armor and different wings and different things to help you to get to where you want to go. And that's basically, along with a course that I have and the book that I'm writing, just kind of getting a brief overview to help you figure out, okay, this is where you currently stand. This is where you want to be. Let's use the app to help us get there.
Really cool. Let's take a quick step back into, how you got there as an entrepreneur. Like, you came up with your idea, obviously it became wildly successful. And did you have balance throughout that process, or was that something you had to get after? Like we talked about that what now part of it. What was that as far as your journey goes?
That's a good question. I do think that the reason I was financially successful, a big part of it does have to do with the fact that I was aware of, even though I didn't call it the 5 cores back then, I didn't kind of come up with that till after I sold my company and I really started focusing on this stuff. I was aware of my physical, my relationships, my mindset, because like I said, I was constantly reading these books and improving and trying to get better every single day. So I think it was because of, not in spite of, meaning I didn't put everything into just my career and finances, although, sometimes people do that and it pays off. But what's unfortunate is when it does hit, then it's like their values are so screwed up and they feel like they just lost a family member and they don't know what to do now because they haven't developed out these other areas of their life. And that's when, you look at people like Bieber, like we were talking about, the if only type scenarios. And so, the key for me is just to make sure that these people understand that, and where I was is, as you're developing these things out simultaneously, the other cores and the other areas will automatically grow. There's a ripple effect, I call it. So like if you're developing your confidence, your physical health, you're doing well in your relationships, you're going to naturally do better in your career. And you're going to naturally make more money, and you're going to figure out like, no, I shouldn't just take it up the rear from my boss. I'm going to speak up, or you know what, why am I in this job when I'm miserable and I could be doing this? I have everything within me to do it, And so, and I always tell people, let me preface, don't quit if you're living month to month, don't quit your job and just be like, I know I can do it. Like, get your side hustle going. And to me, that's the way to do it. Like, figure out, okay, well, this is what I really want to do. And then you'll find the time. Trust me. I know everybody's first thing will be like, well, I don't have time to do that. Well, I work. If you're really passionate about something and you get an idea and you're like, yes, this is it. This is where the future's headed. I can help. This is going to help people. It's something I'm really good at. You'll figure out a way to make it happen. And you just got to stick with it until you do.
What is the key to managing that process at the same time? I'm an entrepreneur, but I do my thing full time. I've been able to make a living for it. Are people, to me, really, are they entrepreneurs if they don't dive in? And, I know everybody's in a different situation, but I see a lot of half-wit entrepreneurship. And, if you're doing it just to make some extra bucks, that's one thing. That's not an entrepreneur to me. An entrepreneur to me is someone who's gone all in on their idea. And so if someone's doing a job and then being an entrepreneur at the same time, it can be difficult to get to where they want to do. How are they able to do both and get there? And I've heard, Gary Vee say stuff like this and the side hustle. And, I think, hard work is important, but, one thing's going to suffer. We used to say in football, when you take on, like, if you're a linebacker and an offensive lineman's coming to block you, if you don't address him first, you're not going to get to the ball carriers. So you can't serve. I know you can't say this anymore, but you can't serve two masters, and that's really a very, very telling statement, because of the fact that if you're trying to do two things at once, you do zero of them great, right? So how does someone address that? How do they stage that? And I'm not saying it can't happen, but how do you do that and succeed in both until you can go do the other?
So, right. I hear what you're saying. And like I said, though, the thing is, it doesn't happen overnight. So right. Unfortunately, the way it goes is you can't just quit. If your job is paying your bills and your rent, you're not going to if you decide to become an entrepreneur, it's not going to happen within a month to where you can then start paying your rent. So there's just no choice other than you've got to figure out what is it I'm really passionate about and what I love. And if it's not what you're currently doing, you got to keep doing that. But now with technology, like, you've got your phone, like, if you're in a job where you have downtime, like, be working on your plan, be working on what you need to do, and start developing that out. And then you just got to start getting it going on the side. And there's a lot of ways, technologies, and science, where you can independent contractors, like with Fiverr and these types, like you can start making money pretty quickly if you start developing a niche and are good at something. And finding good people in this world, regardless of how many independent contractors there are or people that have their own business, finding good products, services, people, it's so freaking hard. And so if you become good at it and that's what you're good at and you're passionate about it, that will get recognized. It might not happen overnight, but it will. And, that's when you can then transition, and hopefully when you're making enough money, be like, okay, so long. And then you start this next journey, where you can actually start making some real money, but it's not going to happen immediately.
Right. And so that's a great point. So time frame wise, is it basically for them to figure out, okay, I'm making X, they have to know what they need to make in order to transition out of it. And then because entrepreneurs are so rarely successful in like you are, I've had my own business since, I guess, we're on like 19 years. I'm not as successful as you are from a financial standpoint, but I've, never had to go get another job, type of thing, since I transitioned. So what part of that, when do they know, hey, it's time that I can make that move? And I know it's something you probably coached them through, but like, what are some of the things they have to be able to recognize, the signs and accountability that I can make the move now, I can go full-time entrepreneurship?
I don't have a magic answer other than like I said, everybody's got a different scenario. Like, what you need to pay your bills, at the end of the day, like I said, I would recommend, almost depending on what it is, testing the market, like using a Fiverr or an Upwork to sort of like, if it's a product or a service you're offering, and go out there and start seeing if people, number one, there's a demand for it. And number two, start saying, I'm going to actually try this. Do I like it? Am I getting paid? Are people giving me good feedback? And then, when you are able to start making enough money straight up to pay whatever your bills are, and you can actually quit, or maybe there's an in-between where you can cut down your hours at the job you're at and then start spending more time, creating this vision and these goals for what you do want to do, and practicing it and whatnot. And then, at a certain point, it's okay, this can sustain my lifestyle, so let's go.
Very, very interesting. Now, can they apply these principles? Let's say they work in corporate and they're comfortable there and they don't want to be an entrepreneur. How can they take an entrepreneurial approach to their own life, utilizing your principles? And, hey, I'm comfortable being in the 9-to-5 job. I make decent money. I can support my family. How can they apply that to get them the most out of their lives, and from according to what you're talking about?
So I'm sorry, make sure I understand the question. Can you rephrase?
So applying this entrepreneurship principle to their own lives, like you're talking about with accountability and each one of these areas.
Yeah.
They're not entrepreneurs. They're people that work in 9-to-5 jobs and have some level of success in that.
Right. So again, remember the ripple effect. So you can't just say, oh, I'll worry about that later when I become successful financially. Like, I'll worry about my relationships, my physical health. I do understand and think there's merit to, when you're trying to build a business, it's going to take a lot of time. And you know what? So you may not be spending as much time with your physical health, your relationships and whatnot, as when you have all the money in the world and, you can, spend more time on these things. However, if you neglect them completely, and if you don't proactively work them into your schedule, like, you got to find a way to spend time with loved ones, people that that you care about, and face to face, not just liking their picture on Facebook. You've got to find time to get your body moving, and to get enough. You got to figure out how to get enough sleep. You got to figure out a system to put the right food in your body, because that's all gonna percolate out into this career in finance. So you're actually stabbing yourself in the foot if you just ignore that and just are trying to focus on your career in finance. Like I said earlier, It's because of, not in spite of, that I was developing these areas, in my opinion, because my confidence was growing. My perception of the world, just like, okay, I'm becoming this unstoppable force that can do anything. And that just trailed right into my career. And I was like, all right, let's start a business, right? I mean, that college kid that was suicidal, there's no way I would have thought I could start a business and be successful. And by the time I started my business, about I probably 8-9 years later, after I've been growing, it was like, okay, I've got this. Like, this is a great idea. Nobody else is doing this. When I started my delivery service, Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, none of those companies existed. It was literally like, there was a company called Telephone Taxi where you called them up and they weren't even in our area, because I researched it. And it was like, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, you can't quickly get a meal of something that, like sushi or something healthy like Thai food or Mexican. It has to be pizza or Chinese, because at the time that's all that delivered. And I'm like, there's got to be a better, and there wasn't. And so when I suggest people like what they're going to do, and don't just go copy somebody else, because you're just going to be a poor imitation of that. Go try to figure out, what does the world need? Where's the world headed? And then just go, all right, let's do this. And so the fact that we started before all these companies, we actually bootstrapped it. We didn't raise any money in the beginning. Towards the very end, we did, when we realized, okay, if we're going to sell, we need to grow really big and get on the radar of some of these bigger companies to buy us. But we were profitable for 7-8 years. And then all of a sudden, Grubhub, Uber, DoorDash, these guys started coming in with billions of dollars, losing money hand over fist in order to gain market share, coming into our territories and going to our restaurants and saying, hey, we'll partner with you and we won't even charge you for a full year, and giving the customers free food for, and we're like, we can't compete with this long term. And so that's when, the signs were all around. Okay, it's over. It was a good ride. We got in early. Now let's make it our goal to get exited and bought out by another company that's ready to fight these types of people. And that's exactly what we did.
Very smart. And did you go, from a business standpoint, did you go seek those people out, or did they find you from when you knew you were?
I sought out. So we did approach, by the time we were ready to sell, Grubhub and these other companies are out there. We approached them and said, hey, are you interested? We got a I won't name many names, but we got some very insulting offers where it was kind of like, here, take this, or we'll just squash you like a bug. And so I proactively reached out to another company. We were actually Doorstep Delivery was the name of our company, and mainly based out of Florida. We had 19 branches. I found this company called Bite Squad based out of Minneapolis. And I talked to this guy, and we were fairly the same size. They were in the same boat as us. Like, hey, how are we going to fight this? How are we going to get the most value out of our company and be able to exit? And so we merged and we became part of them. And then we raised money and we started buying other companies, and we got big enough to where we got on the radar of this company called Waiter Holdings out of Louisiana, and they purchased us for that $321 million.
Very cool. That's an awesome story. And then I guess to the last part of it, because so now you had all that and you had to work on yourself, right? How did you address each one of these areas?
Like I said, I'd been already doing this for many years. So when I did sell my company, I had that great feeling like everybody gets, like an anchor was off my back. 9 years of my life was spent building this thing. And I just let myself go. There was stuff I was neglecting, and I knew that I needed to get back to my 5 cores. And so I was playing golf, and I was spending more. I just had a newborn at the time, and I was like, okay, God, I need to. And then it was like, once I'd kind of fulfilled that and gotten back into the groove of making sure I was really filling all these other areas, it was like career and finance wise, it's like, okay, now what? What's next? It wasn't, like I said, it doesn't work as like people think, like, oh, you can just sit on a beach and drink a pina colada for the rest of your life. You're so lucky. Like, no, that's not how our minds are built as human beings. We have to constantly be growing. There needs to be a challenge that we're working towards. And so I said, okay, what's my next thing? And I was like, well, I've been doing this personal development stuff on my own and developed my own system over the years. Now I have a small child. If nothing else, I want to help him not suffer the same way I did and be suicidal by the time he reaches college. So let's build this thing out. and see how it looks. And that's when I started taking all my notes from 25 years of note taking. You don't even want to know how many notes I had, both written and then once, iPhones came out, just thousands and thousands of pages and turning it into, okay, I need to make it a book that can be digested and simplified. And that's when I broke it into, okay, these 5 core areas, the habits within them. And then the app, technology finally caught up to the way I wanted to do things to where I could develop that as well.
Absolutely. That's interesting. Now, this is my last question. And this has been fascinating because balancing these areas are so difficult. It's like the holy grail, what you kind of went through, right? Accountability is a huge part of it. When you get out of sync, I'm guessing that that accountability helps to get you back in sync. Can you achieve all of that balance at the same time? Meaning, does any one thing suffer if you try to be great in all those areas?
That's a great question. And here, the answer to that is, when I say firing on all cylinders, I don't expect every person to every single day be killing it in their mindset and their physical health and their relationships and, so on and so forth. It's more overall in your life. Are you incorporating these things? And is there that balance in terms of are you paying attention to your physical health, or has it gotten, and this is why most people, I help them become aware with this app and my system to sort of say, let's shine a big old spotlight. Remember the Back to the Future exercise?
Yeah.
It's okay, well, if this is what you want said about you in these areas, are you on track to do so? And rather than think about it as I have to do every single thing every day in each of one, it's more like you kind of keep track overall and your momentum. And sometimes you might be spending, like I said, more time in your career and finances because it's your weaker core and you need work in it. Sometimes you might be spending more time in your relationships and getting, developing those that you've kind of neglected. And so that's fine. And the goal is overall, you just start eliminating more and more of these failure habits in each, replacing them with success habits that's building that automatic momentum. Because remember what I said, habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting us. They're going to do their thing over time. I have an equation of life, and this is it. It's called your belief system plus your repeated actions plus time equals who you will become. Okay, I'll repeat that. Your belief system plus your repeated actions plus time equals who you will become. That's everything. So your mindset, your beliefs, what are you taking actions on? What do you believe? Are you a growth owner? Or are you a fixed victim? Are you, do you understand what each of your cores are? And do you have goals in each and where you're headed? Okay, that's the first step. Your repeated actions. Okay, you got to take action. And most of us get to a point where we're such an ADD society and we're such an instant gratification. We'll see a quote that inspires us, or we'll even read something and it's exciting for 5 seconds or half a second, depending on how you look at it. And then until you read the next thing or you see the next, and then it's gone forever. No, you got to take the actions. You got to actually put them into play. And that's where the app, like I was saying, the accountability system of making sure you're doing them until that habit forms. Right? Until you get that automatically okay, I got that one, right? Just like brushing your teeth, just like taking a shower. You don't think about these things because habits, they become automatic once they're formed. So your repeated actions plus time, it's not going to happen overnight. Like I said, it's a compounding effect. And the more you take these actions, get rid of the bad ones, replace them with the good ones. The more you're taking these actions, the more habits you're developing. That is ultimately, that's who you'll become. And that is okay, where do you want to go? Again, back to the future. It's okay, these are the current habits and actions I'm taking. This is where I'm going to end up. It's not rocket science. If I change them and I go this and I develop these things, it's not going to be easy. I call it a front-loaded process. Because our habits, they dig in deep. They're like little spider monkeys that just jump on our backs and just claw in deep. And they're all right, we're on. But then once you're able to detach those things, and again, it's you have to have an accountability system to do so. If you just take one action and then you forget about it, you're never going to develop the habit. Once you do that, though, that's what's up. because then you're going to start replacing those spider monkeys with little thrusters that are going to start helping you, head up into that big, bright, beautiful sky.
Yes. Well, who doesn't want to take off in a rocket?
Right.
Sounds good to me. Really, really interesting stuff. Last question, because I thought of it right now. So you start to you move in the right direction, you get in balance. How does someone work with you on a continuous basis? So someone listening to this says, hey, I need this guy's help. I need Will's help. What are ways that they can engage with you to work with you on these different things?
So my website is More Momentum, MOORE, like my last name, momentum.com. You can sign up. You can reach out to me on there, and I'll get your messages if you want to work with me. I get a weekly blog to help people each week to, build their momentum with this type of stuff I'm talking about. I like to gamify it. I like to make it fun and interesting. I don't like to be boring and here's your weekly tip. It's like I like to use examples from my own life. I like to make it fun, interesting graphics and these types of things. Same with my Instagram page, 5 Core Life, was spelled with an actual 5, not FIVE. 5 Core Life has the same type of stuff. And also you can take the quiz. The quiz is a big part of this. So like I said, where do you stand in your 5 cores? At the top of my website, there's a little, says take the quiz, life evaluation quiz. And literally it's like 2 to 3 questions for each core. It'll take you like 3 minutes, and you can kind of get a sense of where you currently stand in each of your cores. And then what are the actions you need to take moving forward is what I'll then help you with to make sure you start killing it like Marty McFly in Back to the Future.
I think only our age group will understand that and older, right?
Maybe.
People
I don't care. I love it. I'm using it.
Yeah. Very, very cool stuff. Very interesting. Achieving that balance is key, and maximizing each area at different times, I think, in your journey is a real important thing. And then knowing how to judge that and being accountable, which is obviously a core part of what you're talking about. I can't thank you enough for coming on. Share again with them. Do you have any Twitter or Instagram or anything like that?
Well, at the top, my website, More Momentum,
Okay.
MOORE. At the top right, it'll show all my channels. I have a YouTube channel. I have a podcast. So they'll be able to find all that stuff there.
Perfect. Thanks so much for being on today. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, David. This was fun, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you. All right. For the Success for Life podcast, this is Coach Schuman with Will Moore. We learned a whole lot today about taking entrepreneurship to your own life, being accountable, and being the very best that you can be, and getting all those things in balance. So until next time, it's Coach